Thank you, and good morning. So I'm going to be running through the application process. In this section, we're going to go through key dates. I know the dates have been mentioned already, but it's very important to stress those, particularly the application deadlines, so you don't miss out. We're also going to go through the application form and, very importantly, the questions that we're going to be asking you in your application. Plus, there's some supporting information in addition to the application form that you're asked to supply, one of which is Appendix D, which I'll mention at the appropriate times through the application process. And then, very importantly, at the end, how do you submit your application? So I'll just run through that briefly. So the key dates, you'll be very familiar with these already. So obviously competition is open this morning. It's up on the website and the links. Everything in this presentation, by the way, is in the guidance for applicants. So I do urge you to go onto the website and download that. Everything I'm saying this morning is detailed in there, plus a lot more guidance to help you fill out your application. So please do download that and look at it. Going back to the key dates, we have a registration process. So if you're wanting to apply to the competition, the lead applicant for your consortium needs to register through that link. They will then be sent an email back. We close our registration for the competition 1 week before the application deadline. That's because we need to send you a secure user ID and password, because the information that you're submitting may be commercially sensitive and it's kept entirely confidential. So you need your own secure user ID and password, or the lead applicant will need that. So you'll be sent that link. We close the registration 1 week beforehand, so you do have sufficient time to submit your application. As you can see there, obviously the 2 rounds, round 3 closes on the 29th of May, as we've said, and round 4 on the 16th of October, and the registrations for those close 1 week prior to those dates. Just to bear in mind, if you are intending to submit into round 4, so leaving it to the October deadline, the registration will be closed for 1 week between the 22nd of May and the 9 a.m. on the 30th of May. That's 1 week. That's to allow us to close the competition and process the round 3 applications, and then it will be open again the following morning for the round 4. So don't be surprised if you can't register between that week. But again, all of that information is in the guidance for applicants. So just representing the application process, this is what we call a single-stage application process, so a single application form. So by that deadline, you need to submit your application, the appendices that I will go through, and finance forms. Those will then be sent off for project assessment. So that's the technical project assessment by our assessors, independent assessors, and then also the value for money, so the economic assessment that Tim was talking about, that will be done concurrently. There will be a panel held to moderate those results once we get them back in at the end of the process, and the shortlisted projects will then go through the financial assessment and due diligence in preparation to take to the investment board, and then you will then be notified as to whether you've been successful in that round. In terms of the application structure, so we're now on to the application form. We have, as well as submitting your application details, there are some marked questions. Those are the shaded sections in the middle of there, which I'm going to go through. So we'll run through each of the questions one by one. In addition to the application form, I can't stress enough, there are appendices to supply. So there's that Appendix D, which is the value for money assessment. Project appendices, so supporting information to assist your application, and then also a number of financial appendices and finance forms, and I'll explain what those are, what they need to be in a moment. So the application form itself, it's 9 pages long, including the finance summary table at the end. There are 3 sections for the questions. So sections 1 and 2 are each of 2 pages of A4 in length, so it's a Word document that you're completing. And section 3 is 1 page, and I'll go through what the questions are. It is a fixed format, so it's in Word. You can type into each of the sections, but we recommend that when you've finished your application, you print it out or look at it in print preview, because it is possible to type more text into the sections but not be able to see them. And if you can't see them, neither will the assessors. So we urge you to look at it, check it in print preview before you actually submit it. We also ask you not to alter the application form in any way. We need it in that particular format in order to be able to upload it into our competition system and send it out to the assessors. So moving on to the application form itself, the first question that we ask you is to summarise your project. Very short summary. It's not marked, but it's setting the scene for assessors, so we recommend that you make full use of it. At the end of the application form, you'll also have a similar question, and this is the public description of the project. And as its name suggests, if your application is successful in being funded, this public description will be published. So it's important in this section to make sure you don't include any commercially sensitive information, because obviously it will be published on a website or used in press releases. But otherwise, it is the same. It is a summary. It's not marked by the assessors, but it's important in describing what your application or what your project is going to achieve. Having trouble with my buttons, sorry. Right, so gateway scope is the next question. This, again, so this is describing how your project fits the scope of the competition. So the section that Laura went through, how explain to the assessors how your project, your intended supply chain, your project, the deliverables, fit into that competition scope. The assessors will mark, it's a yes-no question for them, as to whether they believe your project does fit the scope. And if the majority of the assessors say that your project isn't in scope for the competition, then it won't be funded, regardless of the scores that you may get in the questions. So it's very important to ensure that the way you describe your project in this section aligns with the scope of the competition. And again, refer back to Laura's presentation or look at the brief, the competition brief, which is on the website. Right, so moving on to section 1. So this is the project proposal. There are 4 questions. They're equally weighted with 10 marks per question, and I'm going to go through each of them individually. So question 1, what are the commercial opportunities that this project proposal opens up for the applicants and its supply chain? So here we're looking for, what is the potential to create value for the UK? The assessors will be looking at, have the size of the market been quantified, and have you provided evidence? The evidence is very important. You'll score more marks the more evidence you can provide. And have you described the existing barriers to entry for new suppliers or competitors in the market, to the market, sorry. So that's question 1. Question 2, how will the project proposal address the problems affecting the development of your business and its supply chain? So how will your project address the problems and the issues in your market? What are your proposed sources of support are required? So whether it's the purchase of capital equipment, R&D activity, which improves manufacturing or product development, systems, processes, and then any specific training and skills development to support the project. So those 3 categories that were mentioned earlier on in terms of what the competition will support. And are the potential exploitable outputs of the project quantified with an explanation of what these impacts will and how these impacts will be additional. So it's important that you set out how the intended investments and project activities will address any identified market failures affecting your business and the wider supply chain, and in particular why support is required across the areas, the capital equipment, the R&D activity, or the specific training, skills and development. So question 3, how does your project demonstrate vision and impact? What are the overall activities of your project? What are the potential exploitable outputs? These could be new knowledge, technology, products, processes, skills, infrastructure, and collaboration. And explain why or how these impacts are additional and not just going to displace existing or other potential outputs from other activity in the industry. Again, providing evidence will help the assessors to score your project more highly. And question 4, so the last question in the first section, what's innovative about this project? So describe the evidence you have to substantiate your belief that your project is innovative both commercially and technologically. So this could include patent searches, competitor analyses, literature surveys, that type of thing. And to what extent will your project push boundaries over and beyond current leading-edge world science and technology, or involve the application of existing knowledge and technology to new areas? So that was section 1. We now move on to section 2, which is about project funding and added value. As you can see there are 4 questions in this section. Again, they're equally weighted with 10 marks per question. Some of these questions also relate to Appendix D, as you'll see highlighted in red there. So the application form is all about the qualitative information, and the Appendix D is asking you to supply the quantitative information, which will be used in the value for money assessment. So we're going to go through each of those questions in turn. So question 5. What is the proposed investment in the project for R&D, capital, and skills and training? The assessors will use your response to this question to assess whether your budget is realistic for the scale and complexity of the project that you're addressing. So is the budget realistic for the size and complexity of the project? Does the financial support required fit within the limits set by the competition? Have you provided a realistic budget breakdown? And have you described and justified a breakdown of the project work packages? So just remember, with this question, you also need to complete the relevant tab in Appendix D, which is an Excel sheet. So there's a tab for each of the questions that are relevant to it. Moving on to question 6. How does financial support from this fund add value? So this question is all about the additional value of the public sector funding. Why do you need the public sector funding for this project? So again, provide evidence that the support will not replace or displace existing or planned investment from the applicants and other sources. Question 7, so this is another one which relates to Appendix D. How will the project proposal lead to new job creation or safeguard existing jobs? So you'll need to, so have you provided evidence to support the assumptions which underpin your estimates, and explain why the impact on employment is additional to what would have occurred without the project? So you need to include information on geographical location, the quality, so average salary and NVQ level, the duration, and whether the jobs will be sustained beyond the life of the project. And then question 8, the last question in section 2. What other wider economic, social, and environmental benefits is the project expected to deliver to those inside and outside of the supply chain, and over what timescale? So describe the benefits of your project, both to your supply chain, both inside and outside of it, including the timelines of the impacts. If there are any negative impacts, how are you going to mitigate them? Again, Appendix D complete is for the monetary value of the potential wider economic benefits, so productivity improvements, cost savings from more efficient manufacturing processes, that type of thing. And if applicable, you should also set out in Appendix D the additional carbon efficiencies that you're hoping to achieve from the project. So that's section 2, looking at project funding and added value. And then the third section is on project management and capabilities. So as you can see, there are 2 questions in this section. Again, they're both equally weighted with 10 marks per question, and we'll go through each in turn. So question 9, what are the risks? So these could be technical, commercial, environmental. The risks to ensure project success, and how will they be managed to ensure successful project delivery? So full guidance on the types of risks that you could identify is in the guidance for applicants, so please do look at that under question 9. We recommend that you rate your risks, high, medium and low, and then explain how you're going to mitigate them. We expect projects of this nature to be risky, and that's why you have the public sector funding available to them. So just by listing them all as low isn't going to score you particularly well on this. But what we're interested in, what the assessors are interested in, is how you're, are you aware of them and how you are going to mitigate those risks. Also, this one, you will need to quantify your risks in Appendix D. And then question 10, what is the project plan And does the project team have the right skills and experience and access to facilities to deliver the intended benefits? So the final question here, clearly explain the project plan, including the work streams, the milestones, the deliverables, project management structure, the team structure, and the role of your partner applicants in the project. So in evaluating this question, the assessors will consider whether there's demonstrated commitment from your supply chain members in the project, and also, is the project plan sufficient for the complexity of the project? Have you provided sufficient detail in your plan regarding the tasks and the resources required? Is the timing of the milestones realistic in your project plan? And are there clear project management reporting lines? With respect to the skills and capability, detail the track record of the lead applicant and the partners in undertaking similar projects, so you can demonstrate the capability there. And in evaluating this entire question, the assessors will consider things as, does the project have the right mix of skills and experience to deliver the project successfully? And is there sufficient benefit demonstrated from the collaboration, so something like increased knowledge transfer? And then does the project management capability have a good track record of managing previous similar projects? So there'll be the things that they'll be asked to look out for. So those are the 10 questions. The last page on the application form is the finance summary table. I've just got a box to bring up there to list out the columns going across the top. So this is where you list out, the lead applicant will go in the first line, and then all of the partners or all of the members in your consortium, companies or organisations are listed in the rows beneath those. And then for each partner or each applicant, you need to list out the company registration number, the enterprise category, so the type of organisation that they are, their postcode, the contribution to the project by each of the applicants. So column 6 is the amount of grant sought, or column 7 the amount of loan. Or you could be filling in both of those if you're asking for both. And are you getting any funding from other public sector bodies? So that will be particularly important for state aid purposes. So that goes into column 8, and then column 9 totals all of those up. You need to ensure that the figures that you put into this form also tie up with your Appendix D and also your finance forms. They all need to equal each other. So that's the application form. As we've mentioned, there are appendices for you to supply in addition to your application. 2 types of appendices, financial appendices and the project appendices, and we will go through both what they are now. So for your financial appendices, each applicant will need to submit a finance form. If you're a business, then you're submitting an applicant partner finance form. These forms are all, the templates for these forms are all available on the website once you've registered. So the lead applicant, once he's registered and got the username and password, log on to the site, and they're all there as templates for you to download. But there's 2 types of finance form. As I said, the applicant finance form is for business, and then there's an academic partner finance form for any academics who are supplying, and we anticipate that academics will apply through the GES system, so they will submit their costs through there, and the GES process will give you an output form which needs to be given to the lead applicant along with your academic partner finance form. So those are the finance forms. Full details of your project costs, I think, are going to be up on the AMSCI website if you want to understand your eligible costs there. In addition to those finance forms, each business partner needs to submit, has some finance requirements, and that is to submit 2 years of audited accounts, and where the applicant is part of a group, consolidated audited accounts, or if you're a new business startup, then you need to provide a company business plan and related financial projections for the next 2 to 3 years. So those are additional requirements to the finance forms. So those are financial appendices. And then the project appendices. So these are in support of your application. So you've answered the questions in your application form. These are to help provide additional information to support your application. They're fully detailed in terms of their structure in the guidance for applicants, so I won't go into detail, but you do need to be aware of a few things on these. First of all, there are page limits, strict page limits, to the appendices. So for example, just on Appendix A, you're allowed up to 5 sides of A4. If you supply more than that, it won't stop you uploading them. It will take longer to upload because it will be a bigger file, so just bear that in mind. But the assessors are instructed to only read the first 5 pages, so there's no point supplying more than that. It will be wasted. We also say that the appendices are not to be used as a continuation in place of the application form. They are there for supporting information. Please don't put web references anywhere in the application form or the appendices. The assessors won't click on them. They're urged. They must be assessing your application based on the written application and the appendices that you supply. And then just to be aware, we've said this all the way through, the completion and submission of Appendix D, that's that value for money assessment, that is compulsory. Okay, so those are the project appendices. So once we've received your application and the deadline is passed, we close the application process at noon on the day of close. So that allows us to get all of the applications into the system that afternoon. It's quite a tight deadline, the assessment process, so we are very, very strict on the deadline of noon. So if your application isn't fully in by noon, unfortunately it won't go into that particular round, and so won't go for assessment. But there are some tips. So once we send them off to assessment, there are some tips to bear in mind, and these are things that our assessors have given to us over the competitions that they've worked with us on. So first of all, make sure that you answer each of the questions fully and use all of the space available within the application form, but remember that print preview trick to make sure that they'll be able to see what you've written. Number your questions carefully so that they can see which paragraphs relate to which questions. Check your application so that it's going to make the best in terms of quality of presentation, to make it's going to give the best impression on the assessors. They'll be far more favourable for applications that are easy to read. Don't use capitals if you want to emphasise something. The assessors think that you're shouting at them. That's the comments I've had back from them. Quantified means putting numbers in, so use lots of evidence and numbers to justify your answers. Avoid using cliches like the market is massive. That won't win you any points. You need to justify or provide supporting information. Don't leave your application until the deadline. You'll be surprised at the number of applicants who always decide to upload their application on the morning of the deadline. But surprise, surprise, everybody, or a lot of people do that. We get the majority of the applications in that last period. And of course, the website is then busy. And so bearing in mind the number of appendices you need to supply with your application, it's going to take some time to upload everything. So by all means, if your appendices are ready in advance, upload those. You don't need to do it all at the same time. What matters is that we've got every single piece of documentation by noon on the day of close. Otherwise, we won't be able to get it assessed. All of that information is in the guidance for applicants. There are some help desk contact details there. That's also in the packs that you've got today. So telephone number for the AMSCI competition, an email address for questions, and then also the website ID there as well. So the last section of my presentation is about submitting your application. Just a few slides to help you through the process. This is the competition page, so we're hosted by the Technology Strategy Board. You can see there's a brief on the AMSCI competition. This is where you need to go to register, so you can either go to the Technology Strategy Board website and search for AMSCI, or go through the AMSCI website itself. So the lead applicant needs to register, as I mentioned earlier on, and then once the lead applicant has his or her secure user ID and password, log onto the site and then download documents such as those templates, finance forms, those types of things to help you with your application. The application form itself is unique. It will have your unique application number, and that will be emailed to you along with your secure user ID and password. If you're intending on submitting more than one application into this competition, which you're welcome to do, but if you're going to do that, Don't register more than once. Contact the AMSCI help desk. Let them know that you want to submit more than one application, and we will then reissue you, or will issue you with multiple user ID and logins, because each one needs to be separate. If you try and use your application form more than once on your login ID, the second one will overwrite the first one and will only be aware of one application. So it's very important if you are thinking of doing multiple applications. So this is what the website looks like once you've logged in. This is what we call the public area. So this is where the standard documents, your finance forms, that type of thing are. And there is a download tab there on the left-hand side, you can see. So click on a file and download it. Just some naming conventions to be aware of when you are submitting or completing your applications. And this is very important to make sure that we get the right files to the right people, because there is multiple assessment processes. Bear in mind, we've got the project assessment and the value for money assessment. So your document, your application form, needs to have your unique application number in it. So that's how we can identify your application number, and any appendices that you supply need to be, so this is your project appendices and also the financial accounts appendices, they need to be in a PDF format so that they're common and standard and all the assessors can read them. And they also need to contain your application number in the file name. So again, we can match them to the application form. In terms of the format, as I mentioned earlier, the application form is a Word document, so please don't try changing the file extension name, otherwise we won't recognize it. The finance forms that you submit, so the academic or the applicant partner finance forms, they need to be Excel. Please don't change the format of those. Appendix D is also an Excel file, and as I mentioned earlier, the appendices are PDF format. So when it comes to upload your forms, so going into the secure area of the website, it asks you to log in with your username and password, accept the terms and conditions, and you're now into your secure area, which is the bottom screenshot there, and you'll see that you have an upload and a download tab. So the download was for downloading those standard documents. Upload is obviously for uploading all of your documentation that you're submitting into the application. Once you can upload multiple ones at the same time. If the website's busy or the internet's busy, it will take some time. So do please allow yourself plenty of time. Once you'll know that they've been submitted, because you'll be able to see them in your secure area. So if they're in there, if you can see them in your secure area, we can see them as well, and they've been submitted. You won't get an email notification that they've been submitted. So just check that all of your documentation is in the secure area, and then you can rest assured it's been submitted. So to summarise all of this, documents to submit, your application form named with your unique application number, your project appendices, that very important Appendix D, your finance forms for every single member of your consortium, including the GES submission output document if you have academics in your consortium, the financial appendices for every non-academic partner, so business partners there, and then the deadlines, 12 noon on Wednesday, 29th of May for round 3, and 12 noon on Wednesday, 16th of October for round 4. And I believe that's the end of my section. So there's just the help desk numbers there again. Okay, thank you very much.